As we bring on Nate Olson, one of the co-hosts of the Friday Night Football Scoreboard that you hear on this very same station Friday nights, an Iowa State graduate and the biggest Cyclone fan in the natural state. Arkansas and Iowa State winning games the same weekend. Hey, for Arkansas to snap a 20-game conference losing streak is one thing. Nate, this was Iowa State's first win at home against Oklahoma since Kennedy was president? Did I get that right?
Isn't that something? 1960, the first one in Ames. So they won at Oklahoma a couple years ago, but they hadn't beaten OU in Ames since 1960. So my dad wasn't even in college then. He graduated in 71. He was a kid. So pretty unbelievable. And, you know, I posted about my dad. He's an Iowa State graduate. And moved to Arkansas in 2004. So he's always joked that, you know, usually one of those teams is going to win. So the one will comfort the other. The times that he's feeling really in the dumps, they both lose, or they're playing back-to-back and lose, you know, in basketball sometimes and football. I know he was elated. He lives about 5 minutes away. I think I could hear him yelling. That was a fun night watching both those games at the same time, trying to keep track. And my wife, Sheena, was with me out here on the deck. I was watching, and she was getting sidetracked. She couldn't, like, I turn it, she thinks she was watching the other game. I said, no. Now we're back at Starkville, back in Ames, back at Starkville. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I feel really good for the Arkansas fans. I mean, there's great fans here, and they've endured some really bad football. And this team, there's a semblance of a football team here, and probably better than we thought. We're gonna pump the brakes a little bit, but still, I mean, be cautiously optimistic. But now you think maybe this team can win a few more games, giving you some hope and snap that streak, and you feel real good about it now. I feel glad for the fans because they deserve something like this.
Well, you got to be cautious at the way you go about it. And I'm not talking to the fans necessarily. Have at it. It's been so long since you had a conference win, so enjoy it. But, you know, for the athletic department, for the marketing department, for the team themselves, you can't go the direction that Mississippi State went last week. And I know we'll get into high school football in a moment here.
Yeah, sure.
Nate, but I mean, honestly, like, you remember last week's SmackDown? What was the one thing I pointed to? Said, I think it's a little early for bandwagon videos.
Absolutely.
After 1 week. So let's not be building statues of Barry Odom and Sam Pittman just yet. It's 2 games into the season, but we're seeing some pretty good things.
Well, what you're seeing is that Barry Odom knows how to scheme an offense, and he did it. He did it pretty well against Georgia, and it wasn't. You know, I noticed that right away, and I tweeted that the first half. This defense is much better. Now it gets a little bit lost because they lose the ball game. Then you come back and you slow down a team and pretty much grind them to a halt. That, you know, sets the SEC record against the division, you know, for passing against the defending national champs. And I think they just really surprised LSU. LSU, don't think, without having tape, I think they were totally, you know, ill-prepared. Odom looked at that tape. He saw what he needed to do. And one thing about these guys, I mean, they may not be the most talented or fast or big or whatever, but you can tell that they take to coaching. They weren't getting it under Chavis, and I think he was a great defensive coordinator, but I think the last couple of years he cashed it in. Odom has brought a new sense of, I think, intelligence to that defense and preparation, and now they're ready to play. And they've got a little bit of heart, too. They've got some guys that bring their lunch pail, Hayden Henry, Bumper Poole, guys like that. And look what's happened now. So a lot of reason to feel optimistic. You still have one of the toughest schedules in college football history. You got to go to Auburn, who is not going to be very happy. And Malzahn, his job's on the line every week, it seems like. So he loses this game, it's going to get awfully hot on his feet. But he knows he's got to take care of business and win this one and really be ready for Arkansas. But I know Arkansas will go in there and a little bit of confidence and give them a game, I think.
All right, Nate, let's get into some of this high school stuff. And
sure.
Unfortunately, what I took from last week's conversation was that, you know, if we're talking the lead story for high school football, it was cancellations, postponements, and COVID. So is that the same from this past weekend, or were there more games than there were the weekend before?
I think there was Wes Moore said on TV here 14. The week before was 15. So, yes, very similar. We had and I'll get into this in a second, but we had the superintendent from Paris on, and it was very enlightening talking about how each week, Wayne Fawcett is his name, great guy. He said each week they write down for the paper who isn't going to play. So in case they need a game, they have somebody. Well, on Friday at 11 o'clock, Two Rivers told them that, hey, we've got a bunch of kids gone home sick, and we're not going to have enough. So they called Hector, who's down the road. Hector's a 2A school, Paris 3A, and Hector didn't have a game. And so by that happened at 11, at noon they had a game scheduled for Friday. So that's crazy how it's going. And Paris won that game, but it was interesting to talk to him. And basically what these guys these administrators and coaches they're operating off of is the AAA will allow you to schedule who you need to, where you need to go, and just get a game in every Friday night if you can, because we don't know week to week how long this thing is going to go. The playoffs, I mean, I think they're up in the air. Nobody really wants to say that, but I mean, I don't think anybody's looking at the playoffs right now or worried about it. I think everybody's trying to get these games in, and then in November, see how that will go. It was a fantastic finish Friday, though. Texarkana wins the game on a punt return with no time left against Camden Fairview, and your own Northside Grizzlies there in Fort Smith, 33-30. This guy, State Stanton, 25-yard field goal with 7 seconds left. Casey Dick, Fayetteville, called 3 timeouts to ice him. He drilled the kick anyway, and he drilled one earlier to tie the game. So this guy, he's got ice running through his veins. And Northside pulls off the big 33-30 win. It's a non-conference W because it's a COVID manufactured ball game, but Northside looking pretty good this year. They got beat by Bryant, but who hasn't? And this is a nice feather in their cap to beat Fayetteville. Fayettille 0-4, if you can believe that. Struggling from the COVID stuff, from a tough non-conference schedule, so they're trying to get going. And then this is another game. We don't talk about the small schools enough. Charleston wins 36-34 over Cedarville. Cedarville's got kind of a historical season going. They were trying to go 5-0 for the first time ever, and they hadn't won at Alumni Field in Charleston since 1985. They were within 2 points of doing it. They went for the 2-point conversion at the end of the regulation, 20 seconds left to tie the game, and didn't get it. So they fall 36-34. Charleston having their own pretty good season. That's a team, as everybody knows, is very tradition-rich and didn't do as well last year. But this year, undefeated in the conference, a big win for them over Cedarville. So that was 2 really hotly contested games right there in the River Valley that came down to the end.
Speaking to Nate Olson here on halftime, Nate, some other big scores were from around the state from last week during Week 5. You had Cabot beating Tennessee Collierville 38-31, another big win for Arkansas, beating an out-of-state school. Trinity Christian topping Robinson, blowing them out 54-0. What were some other big games this week in the maybe here in the River Valley, here in our listening area?
Well, Van Buren, they won over Russellville and jumped out on them right away, and came up with the 3-touchdown win. So that was good for them. I mean, you've got somebody that asks about them every week, and so I was going to mention that, and also mention that they play Mountain Home this week. And Mountain Home is a team that got bombarded by Greenwood last week, but only lost to Lake Hamilton by 14 on the road. I think this is a real pivotal game for the Pointers. They're coming off a nice win after losing to Siloam the week before. Still got my eye on them. I think they're a team that can make some noise if we have the playoffs, can make some noise there, and trying to be in that upper echelon of the conference. And then this isn't in the River Valley, but Conway and North Little Rock came down to the end, and North Little Rock held them off. So 7A Central is really tough. You've got Cabot that's good and undefeated, and Bryan, of course, one of the top teams in the country. So I think the Central is a little bit ahead of the West at this point, but still like Bentonville. Bentonville yet to really be tested.
When you look ahead coming in here to week number 6, I mean, you got lot of big games that are coming up during week 6 this year. I believe I'm looking at here at the schedule. We got, Conway and Cabot going to meet up this Friday, Bentonville and Rogers, Springdale Harbor taking on Springdale. Probably the one that a lot of people, we talked about this a couple times, Greenwood's had a heck of a season so far. They fell last week, but they got a big one this coming Friday against Siloam Springs. There's some big-time matchups here in week 6 of the high school season.
Yeah. Well, and that is, I mean, we've talked about the 6A West. It's more powerful than the East. That's why I think some of those teams could win in the playoffs. You got Jonesboro West Memphis, a couple other teams, but I think the West is more powerful. So Siloam Springs is one of those other teams. You know, they've done well, but then they went to Benton and got beat pretty badly. So another tough one for them. There's not really an easy game, and now Parkview's coming back, and they from COVID, and they play Benton in a very pivotal game. Greenwood's the team to beat in that conference, and Greenwood one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the whole state, I think. So that's a big game. And also, talking about the smaller schools again, Prairie Grove is a team that we haven't talked much about. That's kind of flown under the radar. They're undefeated, and they play at Shiloh Christian. And this is a matchup of 2 really good quarterbacks. Eli Wisdom, the sophomore, I think he's already getting some Division I attention from Shiloh. Very, very good player. Then on the other side, you got Knox Laird. He's a senior. His dad's the defensive coordinator, Craig Laird. Shiloh's coming off a 69-6 win over Green Forest, and Prairie Grove coming off a big win over Gravette. This is probably for the conference championship, and I think this is where Prairie Grove gets the respect. In a lot of the polls, they're not ranked very high. I think they've played, I guess some people probably think it's a softer schedule. You beat Shiloh, though, you're right in the conversation in the top in the 4A because they're number 1 in several of the polls. So big game. It's Old Hat for Shiloh. They play a lot of big games at Champion Stadiums. This is another big one for them.
Appreciate you, Nate. We'll leave it there. Thanks for your time as always.